My new neighbor, Karen, had a smile sharper than a lawyer's pen, and she wielded it like a weapon the day she handed me a $4,000 bill for violating HOA standards on my fence. I nearly choked on my coffee. There was no HOA in our neighborhood, and I'd built that fence myself, post by post, with a permit to prove it. This wasn't just a dispute, it was a declaration of war, and Karen, with her perfectly manicured nails and a clipboard of fake rules, was ready to fight dirty. What followed was a saga of lies, betrayal, and a courtroom showdown that left us all questioning justice, community, and the cost of pride. It started innocently enough. I'd moved to Willow Creek, a quiet suburb where the biggest drama was whose dog barked loudest at dawn. My wife, Sarah, and I wanted a fresh start after years in the city, and our new home was perfect, a modest two-story with a yard begging for a garden. I'd spent weeks planning a sturdy wooden fence, 6 feet tall, to give our kids a safe space to play. The town approved my plans, and I poured my sweat into every nail, proud of the work. The fence wasn't flashy, but it was mine, built with love and a tight budget. Enter Karen. She moved in next door a month later, her SUV gleaming like it had never seen a speck of dust. At first, she seemed friendly, too friendly, with compliments that felt like they came with a catch. "Nice fence," she said one day, eyeing it like a health inspector at a dive bar. "But it's not up to code. You'll hear from the HOA soon." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "There's no HOA here," I said, but her smile didn't waver. That's when I should have known, Karen wasn't joking. She was plotting. A week later, a letter arrived, printed on crisp letterhead with Willow Creek HOA in bold font. It demanded $4,000 for fence violations, citing rules about height, color, and aesthetic harmony. I was stunned. No one in the neighborhood had ever mentioned an HOA, and a quick check with the town confirmed it didn't exist. I confronted Karen, who stood on her porch, arms crossed, claiming she'd organized the HOA to protect property values. She'd rallied a few neighbors, mostly her book club buddies, to sign a charter she'd drafted herself. It was a power grab, plain and simple, and my fence was her first target. I tried reasoning with her. I showed her my permit, explained the fence was within regulations, and even offered to paint it any color she wanted. But Karen wasn't interested in compromise. "Pay the fine, or we'll sue," she snapped, her voice dripping with entitlement. I couldn't afford $4,000, not with 2 kids and a mortgage, but I also couldn't let this slide. Sarah and I decided to fight back, not just for us but for the neighborhood. If Karen could invent an HOA and bully us, who was next? The battle lines were drawn. Karen's fake HOA sent more letters, each more aggressive than the last, threatening liens and legal action. She rallied her allies, a retired accountant named Greg and a nervous single mom, Lisa, who seemed coerced into signing Karen's charter. Meanwhile, I gathered support from other neighbors, Mike, a gruff mechanic who hated Karen's fancy airs, and Priya, a lawyer who offered to help pro bono when she heard about the scam. We dug into Karen's so-called HOA and found it was unregistered, its rules copied from a random online template. She'd even forged signatures from neighbors who'd never agreed to join. The conflict escalated when Karen took it public. She posted flyers around the neighborhood, accusing me of destroying community standards with my ugly fence. She even started a petition on X, painting herself as a crusader for elegant living, while calling me a cheapskate who'd ruined the block. The post went viral locally, with strangers weighing in, some siding with her, others calling her out for the fraud. The attention was suffocating. Sarah stopped sleeping, and our kids asked why the mean lady hated our fence. I felt helpless, but Priya kept us focused. We'll take this to court. Let the truth win. The courtroom was a pressure cooker. Karen sat across from us, her lawyer a slick guy in a pinstripe suit smirking like he'd already won. I clutched my stack of evidence, the permit, the town's zoning laws, and emails from neighbors denying the HOA's legitimacy. Priya was a bulldog, dismantling Karen's claims with surgical precision. She exposed the forged signatures, the fake letterhead, and Karen's history of similar stunts in her old neighborhood. Turns out, this wasn't her first rodeo. She'd bullied tenants in her last town with made-up fines until they moved out. Karen didn't flinch. She doubled down, claiming the HOA was in formation and that my fence was a public nuisance. She even cried on the stand, spinning a sob story about wanting to protect the children from my unsafe structure. The gallery murmured, and I felt the room tilt against me. Her lawyer produced a glossy report from a consultant, really just Greg with a laptop, claiming my fence devalued her property by $10,000. It was absurd, but the dollar figure hung heavy in the air. I glanced at Sarah, her face pale, and wondered if we'd made a mistake fighting this. Then came the judge. Judge Ellis was a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for cutting through bullshit. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing at Karen. You formed an HOA without legal authority, forged documents, and demanded money from a homeowner who followed every rule, she said, her voice like a gavel. Do you understand the seriousness of fraud? Karen's smirk vanished. The courtroom went silent, the air thick with anticipation. Priya squeezed my hand, and I held my breath, waiting for the hammer to fall. Judge Ellis didn't just rule in our favor, she turned the tables. She dismissed Karen's claims, ordered her to pay my legal fees, and then went further. Ms. Thompson, she said to Karen, you've wasted this court's time and your neighbor's peace. Instead of a fine, you'll fund a community project to repair the damage you've caused. The project? A neighborhood garden, built on a vacant lot, to be maintained by Karen and her HOA crew for a year. The irony was brutal. Karen, who'd faked authority to control others, was now under the community's thumb. The victory should have felt sweet, but it didn't. Karen's face crumpled as the ruling sank in, and for a moment, I saw not a villain but a woman desperate for control in a world she couldn't bend. Her allies, Greg and Lisa, looked defeated, caught in her scheme and now paying the price. The neighborhood was fractured. Some cheered the ruling, others whispered about petty revenge. Sarah and I walked out of the courthouse, exhausted, our savings drained by the fight. The fence still stood, but it felt less like a triumph and more like a reminder of what we'd lost: trust, peace, and the dream of a simple life. Back home, the garden project began, but Karen barely showed up. She moved away a month later, her house sold quietly. The neighborhood tried to heal, but the scars lingered: whispers at barbecues, sidelong glances at mailboxes. The garden flourished, a patch of green where kids now played, but every time I saw it, I felt a pang. We'd won, but at what cost? Justice had been served, yet the bitterness remained, a reminder that even in victory, no one escapes a fight like this unscathed. What do you think? Was the judge's ruling fair, or did it go too far? Share your thoughts on where justice lies when a community turns on itself.